welcome to the next part of my Yun Masterclass series, and that is the resets. Unfortunately, this is a intermediary or expert Yun topic, so I do apologize for those of you that are new players who are watching this, but this information will be here for you when the time comes that you need it. So before we get into things, this introduction video is going to cover what the different resets are that we're going to be talking about, the risk-reward of certain situations, situations where you may or may not want to go for a reset, and why, and also the sort of things that you need to be cognizant of while watching your opponent to see how they react during your resets and how you can adapt your resets to still work, even if they do manage to parry out sometimes. So while I was in Japan, I talked to a lot of the top Yuns about resets, when and how to do them, what resets they tend to go for, among other things. And the most common denominator of the Yuns that I've seen use these resets are that they are very comfortable in their Genei-jin. They're very comfortable freestyling, and they're very comfortable with the fact that even if they messed this up, it was a risk that was worth taking. Now, what I mean by that is that the most common situation in which you're going to be using resets is a state in which your opponent has had their damage that they are taking scaled, either off of a Zempo tension, or an early Zempo tension, or a combo that has a dash punch in it, or a combo that starts with shoulder. Because dash punches inside of Genei-jin actually scale a lot for both meter and damage, and so do starting the combos with shoulder, like 1-2-3 shoulder instead of 1-2-3. Although doing resets off of Zempo tension is not something that is suggested against a majority of the cast, there are setups for it, and I will be going over all of those as well. Now, the thing about these resets is, based on the stage that you're playing on, it may or may not be worth doing things simply because of the fact that you may end up mid-screen where your enders are going to be harder, or you may be able to get your opponent to the corner depending on how big the stage is. So, as an example, in this particular setup that I have here, let's put on the Xbox before I go and bring up the stages. So in this situation here, I started this with 1-2-3, activate, crouch medium, stand, heavy punch, Kara dash, Kara standing heavy punch, and then Kara standing heavy punch into hard punch shoulder, super jump forward, medium kick, dive kick. Now, if you want, as you can see, you're already basically cornered your opponent, no matter what you do. So, worrying about resets here is not a problem. There's also situations where you can put them in the middle of the screen if it's a matchup where you would rather them be in the middle of the screen. This is not something that's very common. I haven't tested what this particular setup works on, or what characters. I just know that it works on Shotos. But if you were to do this where you don't start with, 1-2-3 activate into Daipon loop, and you just immediately went right into your, like this. Now, as you can see here, there's basically 2 full dashes, or back dashes, worth of space that you have to cover in order to get your opponent to the corner. So, if you're not doing any corner carry before you attempt some of these resets, you're going to have a bad time. So, let me bring up the stage diagram that Nikakeo created. I just have to find it. So let me add this scene. Window capture. Okay, so let's make this just a little bit smaller. Okay, so the largest stages are going to be Alex and Yang, or Alex and Ken, and then Yun and Yang, Makoto. The smaller stages are, you know, Oro, Hugo, Chun-Li, Sean, Ryu, and Lena. Now, there are going to be certain situations where when you do these resets, you're going to be in the corner, where your back is to the corner. There are other ways to get your opponent back into the corner, but resets are a way that a lot of people tend to attempt to go from one corner to the other if they're not comfortable doing Daipon loop against a standing opponent, or if they basically just want to try and get as much meter out of their ender as they possibly can by doing late resets. So let's get rid of this. Alright, so when you talk about the risk reward of these resets, you have to think about the fact that in every situation that you're going to be creating, you can be quote-unquote countered because of your opponent's ability to parry and negate the usefulness of these resets. But the reward is just as high as your risk. In some situations, these can yield up to 80% meter, or allowing you to kill your opponent. So let me bring up a video that I created against Ken to showcase how much damage that you can get. This same combo kills Akuma on standing as well. So I'll give two examples of this. I might as well show the Akuma one. Alright, so this is an example of a reset that is used for damage. Also for meter. As you can see here, the meter generated is about 65%, and this combo killed Akuma. So if you catch Akuma crouching and they're not paying attention and they get hit by a low short into a palm after your reset, then you can essentially 100% your opponent and manage to get 65% of your meter for the next round, if it's not the last round. Another example of this is against Makoto. It's the same sort of reset here, but you have your custom ender, or the character-specific ender. And then the same exact combo against Ken, for the most part. Now, these are shown with KO ender, which is not possible on every character, but it's just to give you an idea. Now, because that is the highest reward that you can possibly get, you're going to probably get dialed back rewards in most situations, because you're not going to be risking letting your opponent hit the ground and going for a crouching light kick into whatever. But this sort of high risk mentality is something that can be seen most often when you're either very ahead and can afford the risk, or you're very far behind and you need all the damage removal possible that you can obtain in one of these situations in order to actually have a chance to come back, right? Now, there's a lot of times where you should take the guaranteed damage, and I would argue in most cases taking the guaranteed damage is most important. But in situations where you're very far ahead in the first round, or well, you're very far ahead in the first round and you can afford to take these risks when your opponent has no meter, etc., etc. So like when you want to be doing these resets, it needs to be in ideal situations. So let's say you're playing against Ken, and you know that Ken can EXDP in its 2 frames. So you don't want Ken to have enough meter to EXDP when they land if you want them to land. Or if you know they have enough meter where they're going to be saving it for super, then you can bank on them not using that option. It's not 100%, but it's less likely they're going to be using that option. They would rather be using it for super. The same thing can be said for Chun-Li with EX Bird Kick, among other characters in the cast with their EX moves. Resetting characters like Ibuki is very bad because she can essentially get off the ground on frame 1 if you let her hit the ground. And that means that doing the crouching HK reset in the mid-screen against her is just sort of stupid. But all of these resets, when done properly, are just like any other Oki setup. And they allow you to make your opponent pick their poison, so to speak, on how they want to approach the situation. And these situations are repeatable quote-unquote set play situations, where although they have to deal with your many options, you have the influence to change the timing, what buttons you're doing, if they land, if they don't land. So you have a lot more control over the situation. So even though it's a gamble, the gamble is always going to be in your favor. So if they wish to parry and you let them fall, you still have a high-low throw situation. And if you wish to attack them, you have the varying types of attack timings, options, how many attacks you want to throw, how fast you want to do them, and all of these things mean your opponent needs to make the appropriate reads, and sometimes fast succession of reads in order to get out of the situation. Now, most of Yun's resets come from moves that allow you to land before your opponent. Now, this comes from juggling your opponent high in the air, usually off of jumping heavy kick after Zempo tension, jumping medium kick after either shoulder or a Daikai in the corner into Kara medium kick, and then super jump medium kick. You also have, Zempo into jumping light kick. You have a bunch of different options. And we're going to go through and showcase what these different setups are. And then I'm going to be making an individual video for each of the setups. So let's put the Xbox back on. Now, I use the Xbox because of the situation where I prefer having the reload function, as opposed to 30th edition, which doesn't have it, especially for showcasing resets, because, as you can see, there's a bunch of different options as to what you're going to be doing when your opponent comes down. So it's most important to understand that doing this versus doing quick succession moves, which are basically instant cancels, like medium punch, heavy punch, or medium punch, light punch, matter a lot. You can also do medium punch, medium kick, among among other things, in order to get these resets to work. Obviously, you can just let them fall, and you can Zembo tension, ignore them. There's a plethora of different options here, but let's showcase the different setups that you actually have. So, the main setup is going to be, or one of the main setups that used to be used a lot, and is the only, or one of the only ways to reset mid-screen, is off of shoulder into jumping. So that's your first reset. So let's go to normal mode.
Are you ready? Go.
Your second reset is going to be off of a jumping light kick after a Zembo tension, which allows you to, if done correctly, do forward HP afterwards. Now this is the one that Nito used in the Cooperation Cup. So it's important to note that Ryu has to be at the point, or the Shoto, because it is, I believe, a Shoto only reset, where they have to be at the point where they are just under the point where when you walk forward they continue to shift the screen. Now it's important when you do this to do a late up kicks and then do a early jump light kick as you're going under them. Because if you land too far away, you're not going to be close enough to make the forward medium light kick go under. So as you can see there, it almost worked. I'll be making a video specifically on this though. The other resets you have to worry about are the approaching light kick reset. The universal overhead reset off of dash punch mid-screen. And then you also have resets off of like steady medium kick, etc. And then you also have resets off of bombs against certain characters, where you can get side swap mix-ups. Now, the most common setup for Zembo tension is the medium kick up kicks into super jump heavy kick, and this works against the entire cast, where it's a high-low left-right mix-up. And then there are non-Ganesian resets on 2 characters in the cast, or 3 technically for Q, but it's not really the smartest idea to go for on Q. So we have Chun-Li and Makoto. It works against both. And this is something I'm only going to cover in the introduction, because you don't really need a whole lot to go off of this. So after a Zembo tension, you have close standing medium kick, and then you can walk under her or stay on the same side, high and low, etc. You get your command throw, you have all of your different options. So now I want to talk about the timing of parries that your opponent can do. So in order to do this, we're going to re-choose Ryu, and then we're going to have it set to all parry, and then I will set up a reset so that I can showcase the different timings. Now, so in order to get this to work, I have to Zembo him. So as you can see here, if I delay my attacks, he has time to, input the parries, and the slower you do them, the less chance, or the less attacks you do. against your opponent before they hit the ground. Now, if you are to do standing medium punch or standing medium kick, it's a single parry at mostly the same timing, at least off of this particular reset. But you can delay it very slightly in order, or do it early in some situations, which forces parries. So, including standing hard punch makes them parry twice, and you can immediately do another button after that, which forces a secondary fast parry. So it becomes slow, slow, fast, right? Unlike here, where medium punch, light punch becomes fast parries. You also have, canceling into specials, which has different timings as well. You can also just force them to land, and then go for substitution, and tend them to, where you intend for them to land, and you just walk forward enough to get your substitution with the Kara, which I'm fine with. But, that sort of situation isn't something you really want to have happen. If you would rather get a Zempo tension, you can just let them fall, or force a high-low mix-up where you get the Zempo tension off of a standing medium punch or a crouching light kick. So when you are going through these different options and you're deciding what you want to do, there's another layer that you can add to your repertoire where you actually whiff other buttons that go low. So a crouching medium kick, a crouching light kick, or a crouching light punch in order to get faster buttons. So an example of this is doing a whiffed crouching medium punch, or a medium punch that's parried, you whiff crouching medium kick, and then you hit them again with standing medium punch. The same thing works with crouching light kick and crouching light punch. Now, you can also continue with fast parries or slow parries depending on what reset you've done and all that jazz. Now, the other important thing to note is that when you are doing resets that are off of corner situations. Oops. When you're doing resets off of corner situations, the timing for when you can do your standing medium kick varies depending on what reset you do. So this is a bad example, so let me do it.
Prepare to strike now.
So here, you have two different timings, or three different timings, where standing medium kick will actually connect. And it's important to note that you basically can hit them as soon as you can, and they're still. So this works off of, Ingen Agent. If you jump HK or something like that, you can get the same sort of situation to occur. You also have, Zempo tension, just like any other setup. But in the corner itself, the timing that you can do standing medium kick, there's two timings. There's a high timing and there's a mid timing. So it's just like jump-ins where they have to choose when they want to parry. And it's similar with standing medium punch. So So when you're in situations like this, you're trying to get the best situation for you to get as much meter or damage as possible. So, as you can see there, that sort of forced the opponent to parry like 5 times before they even land. So, you can also use Light Punch Shoulder in the corner against some of the cast to go on and force a mix-up. If you do medium punch, dash punch, sometimes depending on the height, you'll go under them just like that. And other times, if you delay, they're forced to parry all the ways. So yeah, I'm going to basically end this here because it's important to note that although these timings are different, you can influence how fast your opponent has to parry. They still can parry them all if they're a god. So being able to understand when and how to mix up between, especially in the corner, you know, hitting tempo tension setups that have a benefit to you. And also understanding that, you know, you do have your specials, and palms especially is good in these situations because you can continue to combo after. Now, resets mid-screen are a little bit harder because all of your buttons will give you a little bit of pushback, but that is what it is, and it's most important to understand that you really want to be trying to change your pattern at which, or the timings at which you're doing your buttons to get a hit on the first 2 hits or within the first 3 hits so that you can actually get a decent ender in most cases. Because if you're starting out your combo with
Into the heat of battle. Go for it. Prepare to strike. Now.
So if you're starting out your combo with 1, 2, 3 activate, and then immediately reset, you have a lot more time to make your opponent make decisions. You also are taking a risk that it's less risk when you do it earlier because you have more time to make decisions and make your opponent make decisions. So the later you end up doing these, you have less ability to end up getting your enders. So if you're doing like 5 or 6, Daipons in a Daipon loop, it's probably not a good idea to reset. But, early resets can allow for a lot of damage in the combo. So, if you want to be resetting, you want to be resetting by the time that your meter reaches about right before the A in where it says maximum, or max on Yun's meter right here. So about 40%. And if you do it much later than that, then you don't really have much time to manage to get the hit that you need in order to get your ender. So I know this is a little bit rambly, but most of my videos are. The next video I'm going to do is the jumping HK reset, or the jumping resets in general. And then after that, I will do the jumping medium kick, the dash punch universal overhead, and then special resets. So sit tight, there will be a written guide for all of this as well.